Check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association Podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm out there looking for the best stories I can find across this beautiful country of ours and the world. Today I have a wonderful guest coming to us from Calgary, Alberta, who I've worked with on a couple committees here, and I've seen his name for a number of years in the industry, and is a wealth of resource and knowledge, and I'm very happy to have him on the show today. We have Terry Mueller, who is the principal welding something SME Worley Canada.
It's all good. I stick metal together. How's that?
He's the welding welder of welding welders. So Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You know, I practiced that intro right before the show started and I blew it. So yeah, it's like
it's all good. It's all good, man.
So Terry, how's Calgary treating you today? You got the snow that we got here in Regina?
But we got no mosquitoes anymore, so it's a blessing having the snow.
You know,
I hate bugs. They all hibernated, but we have to go out and drive.
Well, you know, the years, and you know, because you're a prairie guy, you know how this works. In the spring is the big factor. You want it to warm up, but then you want it to freeze again because all the bugs will hatch, and then you get a frost, and it kills them all. Then you know you're gonna have a good summer.
Oh, for sure. When I was working up in Fort Murray region, you know, it's pretty bad when the mosquitoes are so big. They pick you up and they take you back to their nest. You know, that's how bad. If it freezes, you know, and they all pass away, so be it.
Well, and up north by the Fort Mac region, the fish flies, the black flies, the horse flies, they're the size of my fist, you know, like they take a chunk out of you. You know, people don't realize the amount of insects up in that area because it's pretty swampy, right?
The environment is muskeg, and muskeg is not fun stuff to step in. And all of a sudden you step in, all of a sudden you see all those bugs coming out, and they look at you and they go, "Oh, fresh meat," and that's when you get attacked.
So Terry, let's start with, you know, who you are and, you know, kind of how you got onto the show. So let's start with, you know, are you a native to Calgary, Alberta, or did you end up there?
Actually, I'm a native to Calgary. Actually, was born here, been here for numerous years. Actually, I had a 2-year stint up in Edmonton.
A sabbatical?
It was kind of like that. Then I moved back to Calgary. So
yeah. And as you know, you're in the welding industry today. You're an expert in many things welding. But how did this career start? You know, were you a young lad in Calgary thinking, I can't wait to grow up and play with metals?
I will tell you the story of how I got into the welding engineering. So a neighbor of mine where I used to live, one of my first place I lived, actually had a small MIG welder. Well, I have a bad hobby. It's called cars. And as you know, in Alberta, we have rust. So I start welding patches. Well, one of my father's friends said, "Can you fix this airless paint sprayer for me?" It was a handle. Well, I said, "Sure." You know, I'd need a couple of inches of weld. I should be able to weld it. And I welded it. And guess what happened? It cracked. I didn't know that you can't weld with, you know, on stainless steel, certain things that didn't prepare it properly. Then I was kind of upset. Why did it crack? I can do nice little beads on a panel. And that's got me into the thing of welding and technology. I love the science behind it. People say, "Oh, I can weld." And I was like going, I failed. My first weld failed. Why did it fail? And that's led me to my career path to date. So I started practicing welding. I bought myself a welder. I still have that same welder until the day I die. That welder's coming with me. My son will be very upset. But that's his problem, not mine. And I just love welding. You know, people forget how important welding is within the world.
Yeah.
I strongly believe it started the Industrial Revolution.
Well, the iron, it was like the second Iron Age, right?
Yes. And, you know, and that got me excited. Then I went to Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. I took the welding and mechanical as well. And I just got more and more enthralled in it. And the thing is I have to admit, I had fantastic mentors from the beginning, from tradespersons all the way up to PhD engineers. It was like, everybody says, welding's easy. You know what? To make a great weld, it's a science. And it's a pure engineering. I know some people do not believe it's pure engineering. Well, we can discuss that later, but you know what? It is welding is an art. It's an engineering art.
Well, I find that it is the intersection of many sciences, and you can pick any one of them and be great at an individual one. So, there's the physical sciences where you're in control of your body and how well you lay a weld in, and the hand-eye coordination and the muscle memory. That's a science in itself. So for the physical welders that are laying beads, they have grasped a piece of that science. Then there's the metallurgy. Then there's the materials. Then there's the electricity. Then there's the ambient, the surroundings. There's so many layers that all happen once you start scratching that surface, right?
I fully agree. We're one of the few countries who do not recognize welding engineering as a scope of practice. You think about it. We deal with chemical. We deal with electrical, we deal with mechanical, we deal with all the scopes. And, around the world, welding is, highly regarded, I think. To be honest, Canada's kind of, we're a little bit behind the pathway that way.
We are. Now, for yourself, when you started getting into this, you said you took the course at SAIT, which yes. I think that course doesn't exist anymore, but I think now it's under the Welding Engineering Tech, the WET program. Which would be similar. Now, when you went into this, did you go into it because you were interested in working in the industry? Were you looking at this as a way to perhaps work in a lab? Where did you see yourself kind of fitting in this industry?
So when I first started, I did go to the Welding Engineering Technology program.
Okay.
And when I got into it, I got more fascinated by it. Now, as we all know, and Alberta is the largest consumer of 6010 electrode in the world. Don't know why. Don't ask. Max, we had discussions about this.
Yes, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
And I thought, and I started fooling around with wire, and I started fooling around with modified waveforms, and I saw the potential in that. Then when I graduated, I did pay my dues. I was on the shop floor, and took courses, took examinations until the position I'm at today. And I got more and more enthralled in it. And people say, it's just put 6010, 7018. And all of a sudden, I was like showing, and as you probably know, I love wire processes. I think for us to be competitive in the international marketplace, we need to adapt less of F3, F4, like cellulosics and encompass wire.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we have to do more and more prevalently. And when I got into it, I start getting to the engineering portion of it. Then I start getting to higher positions. Then we actually start implementing this. And I have one project where we actually did everything in the facility was with wire process. I had to check my car, see if nobody cut the brake lines of the welders or put a palm underneath. And I had welders going up to me and they said, why are we beep, 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 beep doing this process? And all of a sudden, at the middle of the project, I had a welder come up to me and says, you know what? I'm buying a suitcase. And I said, why? Because, you're right, Terry. I can be more efficient in a longer duration period of time. He said the environment, everything else made him a better welder. What else do you want to hear as an engineer?
Yeah. No, and it's amazing. This topic could be a show in itself, right? I cut my teeth in Saskatchewan. I'm well versed in 6010. It's considered the field rod. When you look at 6010 under a microscope and look at what it's made of and how it reacts and how it's under cold service and how it cracks and all the issues that a cellulose rod can provide, it's hard to make a case for it, right? When you really look at the science of 6010, everything looks like it shouldn't be used. But when you are a welder and you actually do use it, you think of the 100 ways that it makes your job easier in certain instances. What they don't think about is where something else could replace it, right? And it's like, how does this cover that, or how does that cover this?
You're 100% correct. Is just that there's an ideology that's been instilled. Even if you go look at the province of Alberta, they still have a test where it's 60-10, 70-18 for your B pressure test.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they instill that in the mindset. And they, my personal opinion is ABSA needs to expand on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know there's a wire welding operator ticket that was kind of put forth by AWOC and stuff like that. But you know what? If you go to other countries and see what their pressure test is, they deal with all the welding processes, not just one particular one. And that's what we have to need to do. And especially right now where Alberta is trying to adopt the European trade kind of apprenticeship program, we need to adopt, including the testing as well, not just the curriculum, but including the testing.
So for yourself coming up in Alberta, the oil and gas center of Canada, a province that has really invested heavily at, all levels of government into, kind of pushing the idea that this is the main industry for Alberta and always will be. The schools kind of got geared towards it, the colleges, the training centers, everything from the bottom up. And they all have this idea that, and from outside of Alberta, we look at it and it seems a little archaic in some ways. And this can be very controversial to people inside and outside of Alberta, right?
Yes.
For yourself, do you feel like there has been significant progress in the oil and gas, industry in terms of the welding procedures? Or do you feel like it's kind of in a rut, or there should be advancement?
It's not in a rut. And thank God for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you go look at a lot of the end user specifications, there was such great reluctancy, including some of the organizations I used to work for, about wire processes. And I always make the assumption that, people say, oh yeah, just run 60-10, 70-18, you'll be great. We still had a repair rate.
Absolutely.
We still had, and cold temperatures. We looked at all those things. Now, if you look at the wire processes, you got a seamless wire that you can put on a spool and you can leave it outside and you don't have to worry about the hydrogen content unless you dump it in the water and drag it behind your truck and everything else. We had to change our ideology. When we had, I won't mention the company name. When I said, I'm going to still wire processes on facility, I had a couple of people tell me I'm crazy. We're going to have all this huge defect. We had a project just north where I live where we had no repairs on a facility. And we were running 48-inch and we had one set of welders. They did is 2 48-inch joints, 7/8 in a day without feeling fatigued. Once you get everything set up, done correctly, you will have a better product, better quality, better productivity. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And now companies within Alberta are actually having a 2-price structure. You want me to weld stick? Here's your 1 price. You let me a welder wire? Your price just dropped.
Wow.
So it has changed drastically.
Good.
But like I said, I never got a Christmas card. So it's just like for some of the things I used to do. But now when you look, and I went to shops and everything in Alberta, I'm still love going to shops because, I always say they're the first line of our defense of making sure we have a great product. You don't see them buying new, transformers or tombstone welders, stick welders. They want to buy the latest technology. And, we do have 2 excellent manufacturers with, that do sell this technology. And now they're saying, look at Terry, I can weld this. I can weld this 6-inch pipe in minutes instead of taking hours, because you take 60-10, you don't have to grind, before you put the hot
cleaning and the grinding and the lands and the setups and all that work, right? Like the technology that has come out, like you mentioned it a few times in the modified waveforms. I mean, there's machines that are specifically made just for this job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a cute story. So where I used to work one time, I had an engineer who just came freshly out of school, ran up to me when we were in the shop, and he pulled on my sleeve. He was so adamant. He goes, Terry, what's, and I go, what's wrong? Well, and he goes, there's a welder over there throwing dirt on a weld. So I'm going, huh? And I'm going, I know the shop pretty well. So I went over and I went like this, went, oh my. I says, it's smudged dirt. It's not dirt, it's flux. He needs it. So we brought it to our attention that every EIT and every junior engineer had to take a welding course in Calgary.
Good.
And it was the funniest comment.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden they come to realization and when they welded stick, the profanity that came out of some of those engineers' mouths, I swear made me blush. Then I stand there and they went to wire, and all of a sudden I said, okay, this is a machine, and this is what you do. You point it, you do this, follow this. That's all you have to do. And I guarantee you'll put a nice root in. And we're not telling like it's complicated. It was nicely set up. And these welders were actually doing a nice route that meets code. And they said, why are we not adopting this? I said, well, there you go. This is why we have to push the envelope within our specifications. And I had done a spec for a company. It's still valid after 12 years. I was kind of, proud of that. We actually pushed the wire process. So that's the thing. And I just find that, and the comment I get from that course, Max, was one of the nicest things I heard. I says, I will never, ever be mean to a welder again. I cannot understand the environment, where they weld and everything else. And, us as engineers, sometimes we don't treat them appropriately. I says, I'll never, ever do that again. Because this lady, she was very fantastic engineer but she didn't know how difficult welding was. When she actually did it, when I heard those comments, perfect.
Well, I one of the best stories or experiences I've had with an engineer, because as a welder myself, I can be honest and say that not all my experiences with engineers have been positive. There has been some butting of heads over the years, because I'm not, and I didn't ever want to be just the welder that pulled the trigger. I wanted to be an educated welder and understand my trade and my field. And the more you understand, the more you disagree with some of the things that get handed down, And I went to go work for a company here in Regina, one of the largest companies actually in Canada. And I had a wonderful head engineer, Nick Coleman. Love the guy. If you're listening, I love you. And Nick Coleman he was head of the engineering department, and he had a program with all his engineers where once a week, one engineer would get sent down to the floor, coveralls and up, and be matched up with a fabricator. And you're going to go help the fabricator today. Tack everything together, check the parts, prep the parts, see the process, and get it ready for welding. And then you're going to go check all the measurements post-welding to see how the products came out. And him doing that changed the whole vibe of the fab floor. Number one, the welders got to meet and know all the engineers. They got to see them and get, joke with them and have coffee with them. And the engineers all got to try and see the work. And they would see where the print said, yes, this will work. And when they got on the floor, no, it will not. Right. And that connection between the engineering world and the welding world, or the shop floor, I feel is so crucial in today's environment.
I fully agree on that. And we have to add the technologists as well.
Right. The technologists. They're the middle people. They're the ones that communicate both languages.
I'm right now dealing with a PEGA, and I'm a first vice president of ASCT, so we're having discussions. And I always make this comment. It's called the engineering triangle. On one side, we have technologists. The other side, we have engineers. And the other side, we have tradespersons. We need each other. Triangle, when it's all together, assembled, it's one of the strongest geometric shapes known. And that's where the technology, the welder, they have the gift of the hands. Like I can do a good TIG weld. I have seen welders who, it's art. I actually start developing a tear down my cheek when I see some of their welding, because I go, wow. And I have engineers. I actually had mentors of engineers You mentioned one. I had Roy Bagley. He was a welding engineer and metallurgist. He taught me, and the thing that impressed me the most, the one time we were making a new weld procedure for a casing bowl. Here's a master's degree engineer. You couldn't even tell. He grabbed the grinder. He was grinding with me. And the welder goes, "Who's this?" I said, "Oh, this is Roy Bagley." And he went, "Really?" And it was he mentored me to be hands-on as an engineer. And as a technologist, we are the glue that adds all that together. We have the I always call practical engineering. We burn our hands, we go on the shop floor, we go into vessels, we do all that, but we have that other aspect of engineering. Welders say, it won't affect it. But metallurgically, it can. It's invisible. We don't look at grain structure. We can't. So, but being a technologist, we can know that, you know what, if you don't preheat that 2-inch piece of steel, you're going to have issues.
Yeah.
We have that. And a lot of technologists were welders who kind of want to progress, especially within their career path. And that triangle is in Canada is strong.
Yeah.
I have been to countries where it's not. And I still say, and hopefully some people will listen to the statement, we develop some of the best welders in the world.
100%.
I will challenge some of our B-pressure welders against any other welders in the world. We have fantastic programs and everything else. We just to make sure that, especially in the high school, that welding is a very respectable career path. I don't call it a trade. It's a career path. And I would love to hear, instead of saying welder, I love to hear the word welding technician, because you are a technician. You have skill sets.
Yeah.
And we have to start recognizing that.
No, you're right. Like, we just placed 3rd in the world at World Skills this year. We are in the top 10 every World Skills. I've worked in projects all over the world, and I always tell people when I work internationally on projects, I worked at the gold mines in Africa. I worked in a few places, and when I'm there, it's always the who's who of the planet for welders, welding technicians, technologists, and engineers. I'll see people, and it's really interesting because you get to know who the other countries are that are the big hitters. You got Australia, you got Germany, you got Sweden, you got sometimes a couple French guys. You don't see Americans, you don't see South Americans, but there's always a few Canadians. Everywhere I go, there's always a few Canadians, because we are very highly regarded and our programs are very, very good. We take it seriously, and we're not a country that makes things cheap. We make things expensive, but we make it right. And that's a difference, right?
I fully agree. And this is something that we have to do within the whole country. Is we always have to worry about public safety. I remember both APEGA, ASCT, and all that stuff. We worry about public safety. If something's built in Alberta or Canada, I can sleep at night.
That's right.
I know that the quality is there. Some other countries, we have, including NDE, we have concerns. So, I don't consider it expensive. I think we invest. If you make a product in Canada, you're actually investing more to make sure that it's actually going to meet code requirements. It's going to meet the engineering requirements. So when I hear comments like saying, "Oh, it's expensive to build in Canada," no, we do extra due diligence, and it's an investment,
That's
not a cost.
fee. Yeah, and you're right. So I did misspeak when expensive, because I agree with you. I mean, I'm a car guy, just like you. I don't look at cars as expensive or cheap. I look at them as whether complete or incomplete. So
well, I love welding. I love building. I'm actually a member of Society of Automotive Engineers. I love it. That's why I still work. It's terrible, but for me, cars are an art form, especially metalworking. I have got people show me how to panel beat on an old stump. There was an old gentleman who used to work. That's art. Am I good at it? Not bad. Maybe I'll work, win first prize for some of my panel beating at CNIB, but it's just, it's just, I love metal. There's something about it. I can heat it. I can, I can form it. I can stretch it. I can heat shrink it if I have to.
That's right.
I had a gentleman who was a plater from England. We accidentally, on the quote word, accidentally bent a main beam on a skid package. And he comes up and, he was a soccer fan like I was. And he goes, Terry, come here. I'll show you something. He straightened it with oxyacetylene. He adjusted that torch.
Mm-hmm.
He used heating and cooling and patterns. He got that beam where we couldn't even see the difference.
That's right.
That is beautiful.
It is.
That's tearful. That's art.
Yeah, I got taught that art form of straightening and heating in my early 20s, working at the steel mill, and it has come to be a lifesaver in my life thousands of times. I can't even count the number of times people were about to go get the grinder or get the gouger and take it apart and be like, no. Just get me a torch. I'll straighten it right out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And, the engineering part of it, how you configure the deflection from the heat and the pattern, that's where, we talk about welders, but we have to look at the fitters. We look at everybody in the fabrication process. In Canada, we are a very, very skilled country.
We are, yeah. And it's like, one of the things that we talk about at my level with the CWB is how do we maintain that skill? How do we ensure that we have the next generation of skilled labor coming up and have the exiting generations pass that knowledge down, right? And ensure that, because so much of what I've learned, what you've learned, wasn't in a textbook. It was from our mentors, from the people we worked with, from the people around us. Well, how do we ensure that gets into the next generation's brains and that they carry that torch? How do you feel about that and, where we're going?
I will make some comments. So one is going to be controversial, and the rest, I will kind of fill in the blanks. First and foremost, and I really think we have to educate high school kids, even junior high school kids. Being a tradesperson doesn't undervalue you in society as a person. And that is, I have seen, you're just a welder. Well, that welder's making more than this engineer. Hey, this welder, this welder here is ensuring that, you got a nice house here, don't you? That welder who welded up that natural gas pipeline is ensuring that you're getting a good constant feed to keep your nice house warm. Having that, and that comes from everybody. If your daughter or son wants to become a tradesperson, support them. There's nothing wrong with trade school.
It's everything right.
This is where there's a difference between Europe and here. And when I'm on some Europe, I'm actually a member of International Institute of Welding on some of the committees, and you should see these people, these companies. They say, John Smith just graduated from high school. He is going to be apprentice with our organization, and they showed this big, huge ad. They were just as proud of him of being a technician as the engineer who's coming into play or somebody else.
Yeah,
they treated the same. They realized they're an integral part of the manufacturing machine. This is something that we have to start doing. There's nothing wrong being a tradesperson. There's nothing wrong with that. We need them. The other comments I have as well is schools need to stop having IT computer labs and desk back having shop classes. How many shop classes have been shut down? And they're wondering why. It's like my son went to school here. He had to drive 4 miles to take auto class, but they have 300,000 computers. We need to recognize we need to open up the shop classes again. And this is the fault of, I do believe, the boards of education.
Yeah.
Boards of education are going towards more white collar career paths compared to blue collar. We got to stop that practice.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny where we're immigrating people coming in from other countries because they have the skill, how do you say it, the hand labor skill sets. We should be doing that internally ourselves.
No, I agree 100%. And I've seen it. I've seen the destruction of trades programs at high school levels across Canada. They get decimated. I've heard the arguments based off of ROIs, the investment needed, the amount of kids they can push through an accounting program versus the amount of kids they can push through a welding program. And to your point, one of the saddest things that I would experience as an instructor when I was teaching at the college was when my students would graduate from the interprovincial program, the Red Seal, and they would pass and they'd get their Red Seal, and there was a graduation, and most of them, I would say 90% of my students, never went to their graduation for welding because they considered it just welding. And I said, you just spent the last 3 years of your life dedicated to this, to get this Red Seal, to get this interprovincial ticket, which is now recognized around the world. And you still think of it as just welding. I proudly display my Red Seals. I went to university too, but my Red Seals that I got from my work in the industry are as important, if not more, than any diploma from university because of the blood, sweat, and tears I had to put behind it. And I think everyone should look at those certificate programs, there's those diploma programs, equal or above a university diploma.
I fully agree. We need, is like when I first started 30 years ago, I'm not going to say my age, but when I started, a tradesperson was considered a second-class citizen within this country. Your son is what?
Yeah.
Oh, my son's this and that and everything else. I have done trades since I was the age of 12. My father was a qualified tile setter by trade. I was free labor. I went with him. I went in an era where a lot of journeyman people were in the trades. And I remember specifically where, you were said, oh, yes, sir, you're a welder. And I'm going up. That's why I want to have a big, huge push. And AWOC's a big supporter of this as well. What's wrong with calling them technicians?
Yeah.
With the technology we have now and what the welders need to learn, including waveform, chopper technology, all these other, we have cold metal transfer from everything. This is technology. It is. You think about the computers, we have, and people say, oh, welding machines have computers. I go, oh, Lord. And I said, yeah, look, I can change the waveform. And they go, what are you changing the waveform for? And actually, these are young engineers. And they ask, I say, great questions. I said, look what I could do. All of a sudden, it goes, why does it sound different? I said, I changed the pulse rate. I did this. I did that. They go, wow, these machines have got a lot of tech. I said, I can actually hear. Watch this. I pushed 2 buttons and I said, this is my heat input energy that I'm putting towards that weld. And their guys are going, really? I said, yeah, we take this. And I show them code Appendix H, Section 9. And they go, wow. And then all of a sudden I said, we always have to look at technology. And the way welders are, and you go look at some of the nice trucks they drive and some of the machines they got in back there, they're technicians.
Yeah.
Like they have that technology, how do you say, mindset. Because some of these, I seen the one gentleman who had a truck, beautiful truck. Everything's the latest technology.
Yeah.
He knew exactly that machine was. So for me, saying a welder, I always say, you'll always hear me say welding technician.
And I think it's always been that way, but it was undersold. A lot of the older fellas in the industry and older gals that I work with, I'll hear this attitude every now and then, where it's like, just give me my old machine. It does just as good a job as today's machines. And I always have to stop and think, well, yes and no, right? Like it's both. Like you are right. 40 years ago, I could grab a DC machine and flip it to TIG and run in a nice route and do the job. And it would pass code and it would do the things. But today's machines can do so much more to make my job easier. And in terms of the problem solving and the understanding required in today's welding world, I think it's elevated. We expect more out of our welders. That's something that we hear from industry all the time. I mean, even simple things that you don't even think about. Like, for example, most of industry expects a welder to know how to use a computer to send emails, do reports, and make an Excel sheet. Well, when do you learn that? You don't learn that in welding school. So some of these gaps of what we expect versus what is reality is getting pretty wide.
I agree. And the thing is, too, is just dealing with some of the manufacturers of welding equipment. what's wrong with the welder putting on a laptop and actually recording his weld, and all of a sudden he sends that information to a central repository with that data.
That's
And
awesome. Yeah.
that is now technology that's actually viable these days. So in other words, that welder has to learn how to put a weld in, read a welding procedure, which is an engineered document. I don't care what anybody says. It is a recipe for success of a weld within the intended service. Go from there. The welder, then we have quality control and insurance to make, ensure that engineering makes sure that weld be not under stress, all that stuff. It's a team effort. And, we got to realize that when the welders stand there, they said, oh, the welders, with the computers and stuff like that, most of them have iPads and, iPhones and stuff like that. I'm still old school, please. Pen and paper never actually crashed on me yet. So I always draft stuff up and I write things down, but I still have a computer as another form of tool. And seeing the welders with chopper, I've seen a couple of them with new technology from our, domestic manufacturers of welding equipment. I'm like going, show me this. Like I've been at it for a while, and I asked them, you show me this, and they know the machine better than some of the reps that sell the stuff.
Yeah.
To me, it's like welders are saying, you know what, we have to adapt new technology because the end user is requiring it, code's requiring it now, it's being more prevalent. We got to realize too, oil. We always talk about oil and gas, but we have carbon dioxide pipelines are being manufactured as we speak. Hydrogen. Think about it. In Alberta, we're thinking about ASME Section 3, which is the nuclear code.
Right.
Like we gotta look at technology as a good thing. One of the interesting stats is the American Nuclear Commission actually allows GMAW modified waveform routes in their welding process. So it shows.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, they would love it because even the nuclear code that's existed for decades doesn't allow cellulose routes. Like, I mean, they've been running them 70-18. And for anybody out there that wants to run a 70-18 open route, it sucks. It's hard.
But it's just now they recognize technology where, you know what, it can make a sound weld in nuclear applications.
Yeah.
So why is there such reluctancy within some of the end users in province Alberta to allow that technology? It's coming a lot better, but I still see a couple of specs saying, you're allowed stick or TIG. But I said, what about GMAW? I have, especially I'm a big fan of my favorite Max. I still love it. I love metalcore. Metalcore with modified waveform or root passes. It is beautiful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just phenomenal.
And it sounds so nice. It sounds so clean going in. Just hisses right in there.
So it's just like I said over again. It's just that we have to adapt technology, and that's having the technician, technologist, and the engineer working together as an engineering triangle.
So before we go on the break, there's just one more thing I want to ask you before we get to kind of like the work you're working on now and the number of groups you're a part in. And I want to kind of circle back to that initial discovery for you of the science behind welding and trying to understand why that handle didn't stay on the painter and getting into that the metallurgy and the science behind it. One of the things that I've always told my students, because they're reluctant to learn the metallurgy section of the course, they're always like, oh, this is the boring stuff. And I always say to them, if there's one thing metallurgy will do for you is problem solve. You can weld good and great all day long, and you're not going to think metallurgy at all. You're going to do all these jobs, and if they go 100%, you're not going to think about metallurgy at all. But the second something goes sideways, you're going to need it. And the problem-solving cycle gets much smaller the more you know about what's happening in the science. For you, how important is it that all the levels get it, from the welders, the fabricators, the technologists, and the engineers, to speak that metallurgy kind of as a common language?
When I did failure analysis, and we had a couple of interesting situations at one company I worked at, we had cracking, and the cracking looked like a checkerboard. And
wow.
everybody went, and we were looking at it, and there's everybody, oh, it's the welder's fault. Oh, it's the manufacturer's fault. And we found out the actual casting material had more aluminum in it than it's supposed to be. Oh, sorry. Had more aluminum in there than it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's aluminum nitrate cracking. I had to go on the internet, and I'm persistent. I'm a stubborn old guy. And I went and looked, and there was a presentation on it, and the exact cracking
Pattern.
profile
Yeah.
was that aluminum. So was metallurgy. Everybody was blaming the welder or blaming somebody, but they didn't realize it was metallurgy that failed. Another
Mhm.
thing as well is if you're worried about it, as you probably heard in the United States, they built a whole bunch of ships
Yeah.
where the metallurgists falsified the MTRs and are wondering why they're getting cold cracking of some of their welds.
Yeah.
This is
This is like $100 million mistake going on right now. Yeah.
right, and it's metallurgy.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it, how many failures happen because of metallurgy, like hydrogen-induced cracking, cold cracking, all this stuff,
Delamination, MTR reports,
Everything.
everything. Yeah.
everything. If we don't have good ingredients, how are we supposed to make a good product at the end? It's like making a cake, right?
Mhm.
If you have terrible flour, you're not going to have a great cake. If you have sugar or anything else, we need to know the ingredients are of good quality. Then we can get a good end product. And that's where metallurgy comes into play. Because reviewing, and I'll be honest, when you review an MTR, people go, it meets code.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Good
but-
enough. Yeah.
But, but code gives you such a wide girth of
A range.
variance.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, chromium price has gone up, so you got less chromium, and you have higher nickel and all this stuff. It makes the rods run differently. I
Yeah.
was in a situation where the 6010, we were running 6010 roots in this application, and all of a sudden went to a new batch, and it ran horribly.
Oh yeah.
And everybody was up, and I said, okay, I want the MTRs. I want the actuals. So we did the actuals, and from the 6010 that we got, that was like in a box, 4 or 5 years old, ran beautifully. All of
Mhm.
a sudden, new stuff didn't. But we looked at the MTRs. The formulations change. Does it
Yeah.
meet code? Yes, it does. But does it meet, the operation factor, operability factor, and all
Mhm.
this stuff? That's where metallurgy came into play. And guess who told me about the welders saying, yeah, watch this. I showed you. And he was showing me that some of it was fingernailing all this stuff.
Yeah.
The metallurgy part comes into play for everything. And especially when you have like one project I was on, the welding engineer actually picked, 316L electrode for
Okay,
a
yeah,
pipeline
stainless,
that
yep.
was carbon steel. And he was wondering why, the weld was written. I said, well, you got dilution from the metal and all this stuff on the 316. Why did you pick stainless? He didn't know. He was a mechanical engineer. He didn't know the art of metallurgy.
Right.
It's art.
Right. He might have gotten away with a 309, maybe, but not a 316.
No, and that's what he picked. And that was just, we did a replacement pipeline to get away, to make that not functioning. It was only lasted for about, I think it was 3 years,
Yeah.
and that was it.
Yeah.
So
Well, those are the
metallurgy
lessons
is
learned.
important.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Terry. Let's take our break now for our commercials. We'll be back here in 2 seconds from our advertisers, and don't go anywhere. We'll be back here for the second half of the show with Terry Mueller from Calgary here on the show on the CWB Association podcast. Don't go anywhere.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here at the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron. Thanks so much for staying with us today with my discussions with Terry here. Terry, one of the things that we were talking about at the onset of the show was kind of the groups that you're a part of, and kind of how I got get to know you and hear your voice and see what you do.
Yeah.
And you said that you'd want to talk about a few things. So first of all, let's talk about the AWOC committee, right? This is a committee that comes out of Alberta. It's the Alberta Welding Optimization Committee. Explain a little bit about what this committee does. Maybe there's people in Alberta who've never heard about it and are interested. And I know that there's you guys do a lot of great things. So
Okay, so the Alberta Welding Optimization Committee, and my Matthew Yarmich, who's the president, told me how many years I've been in it, so I really feel old these days. It was a group of individuals who are in the welding industry trying to promote better welding. And when we mean by better welding is, as we talked previously before, the use of 6010 in Alberta was just rampant, and looking at new technology and everything else. So a group of like-hearted individuals thought to start a committee, and that's where the Welding Optimization Committee started to play. It is trying to make betterment of both the trade of welding, the technology of welding, and the engineering of welding. That's our goal, trying to increase efficiency within this province. We have developed a couple of things that were successful and one that's not that successful. But it was just that we're trying to promote and recognize that welding is an integral part of the growth of Alberta and the community. And that's where we get involved into committee work and code work and APSA, which is the jurisdictional agency within the province of Alberta, having a relationship with them. And we're trying to be a cohesive unit to make things better.
And that's one of the things. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the things we try to always do, and anything that I do, is we try to protect public safety at all times.
Yeah.
How can we make things better?
Well, one of the things I noticed since joining the group is that it's very diverse represented fields. There's people from colleges, training centers. There's people that are engineers, technicians, from the supplier industry. There's kind of a very good mix of cross-section, I would say, of what is a welding industry in Alberta. And I think that's very important for a committee to be successful.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think as an individual, I can't do it all. Anybody says you can do it all is not telling the truth.
Yeah.
And we need suppliers. And I have suppliers that I have dealt with for many, many years. They have been a godsend to me. We have engineers. We have welders, we have colleges. Colleges, I love trying to support best I can possible because I would like to teach technologists that there's more to life than just thinking of, let's burn a rod. No, let's think outside the box. Hybrid laser beam welding, perfect example of it. Friction stir welding, all this stuff. And they're going, what's hybrid laser beam? Oh, that's my next favorite thing.
Yeah, cool.
It's like, metal core is one thing, but doing hybrid laser beam and certain applications, it's going to be hit out of the ballpark.
Yeah.
And that's where we start developing that, what? This is a tight industry. And especially in Alberta, we know each other pretty good. So, you know what? I have phone calls from people I used to work with, and they phone me up. I phone them up. And my suppliers, I always ask, if I have a reason of doubt in myself, I'd rather go to supplier and say, what do you guys think? And they'll send it to their specialists within there. And at least you have a cohesive answer to a solution that you have to resolve. And that's where everybody comes into play. And everybody in the industry, and I have to honestly, I think welding's a very tight family.
It is, yeah.
I stand there. I have still people who, I have worked with for many years. They tap me on the shoulder and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get hit. No, but they said, hey, I worked on you on this project in here. And I have guys who phone me up. So what do you think about this? And I phone up people and I see people on the street. We stop, we talk to each other. It's a family. And I think it's one of the few trades that were so close together. And that's why with AWOC, having the supplier to the technologists, to the engineer, to the specialist, and we're all working together. We're trying to make welding better within Alberta. It's a worthwhile cause.
Well, and I, in the meetings that I've been with, it's been a couple of years now, it's I've noticed that you also have the government's ear. Like you do seem to get quite high up with some of your asks. You are trying to get in and not just discuss amongst yourselves, but actively pursue and lobby governments and agencies for change.
Oh, for sure. And especially in the position I'm in right now as first vice president of Association of Alberta Association of Engineering Technologists and Technicians, I get in front of the MLAs and the ministers. And it's funny where they have a different attitude where they say, oh, you're just a tradesman. And they look at my hands. Sorry, they're all beat up, burns and everything else. But they what? And I say, well, this is what I've told us. I deal with AWOC. I explain to them what's going on. And now they're going, that's ever interesting. I want to do, and this is kind of my, I'm at the later stages of my career. I want to do is see any project that's going to be done in Alberta, stay in Alberta. And we can do that by creating greater efficiencies. I am sick and tired of seeing mega projects being shipped out overseas to be manufactured outside this country.
Yeah.
This is something where AWOC's trying to do as well. We're trying to keep work within Alberta. We're trying to improve efficiencies. The wire welding operator ticket. People are, we're going, oh, geez, you're diluting the thing. No, if we can have somebody who specializes in the wire process, he doesn't want to do the TIG and stick. There's an option there. It's like, how many, you go overseas and you go to some of these other countries, they don't have a deep pressure ticket. They just do a bend test and, so be it. Yeah, great. We have regulations. We have things to protect our country.
Right.
And I want to do, and especially with AWOC as well, is keep that work in here. And this is where I had Matthew Yarmich. There was a couple other individuals when we were much younger and I had no gray hair back then. We talked about it. And, starting this committee, it was passionate about welding professionals. And we got together and we used to, I remember some of our meetings were fantastic. I have a problem. And we kind of, everybody just said, hey, I had this. Yeah. And, it wasn't like, hey, I dealt with it. I'm going to keep it to myself. You go fix it yourself. No. We were there to help each other. That's why we're trying to continue with this.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned another group that you're with, which is ASET, right? So, what is it that you do with that organization and what's their scope and what are they trying to do?
So the Association of Engineering Technologists in Province, Alberta. So we are a regulator of registering technologists and engineering technologists and technicians. And this is where I want to mention at this time. Welding advancements have gone off the charts. Like if you look at the new machines and everything else, they're technicians. And what we do now is if you are a qualified tradesperson, there's numerous other fields, but I love my welding. So if somebody comes in from welding, I make sure that skill, make sure with this person and they can become a certified technician. And the next step from the certified technician, and I'm talking to the IIW, the International Institute of Welding. If you're a certified technician, you should be automatically become an international welding technician.
Technician, yeah.
So that is like the red seal for technology.
Yeah.
So that's something we're doing with ASCT. We're dealing with Bill 23, which is the Professional Governance Act. That is to allow certified engineering technologists to have a scope of practice. So at least you know that the person who took the education experience and everything else is capable of handling that work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what ASCT is.
And what kind of people are on the ASCT board? Is there tradespeople? Is there engineers only? And, for the people that are listening, how do they find out about these programs and what they're doing?
So there's on the website at www.asct.ab.ca. Not bad for a guy who hasn't had coffee this morning.
You haven't had I'm on my third one, man. I don't know.
And go on the website and see what programs that are applicable to you. So the thing is we do not have engineers on the main committee. because it is ASCT on the board. You have to be a minimum of a certified engineering technologist. You have to have so many years experience to get on.
Right.
The only time that we get involved with the PEGA is with the professional technologists, because it's under the AGA Act that we have to have representation for both the PEGA and ASCT to make selections for PTEC.
Mm-hmm.
But it's strictly engineering technologists, and I highly recommend, if you're a technician, to apply as well, become a board member.
Awesome.
Because we need tradespeople. Because the thing is, coming out of school, I'll be honest, you come out of school, you just graduate from kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. You're just starting.
You're just starting. Having a technician who had so many years experience and everything else, they see things in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
They dealt with the technologists. They have done with the engineers. I would love to see a technician, because our election's happening very soon. And if you're a certified technician within the province of Alberta, please apply as a board. So it's an organization where I think we're now 12,000 strong.
Oh, wow. That's a good size for just one province.
It's a good size. We would like to see more people become technologists, technicians.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing it does. It guarantees public safety. We have certified you that you have the capability of handling engineering decisions within your scope. And that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
The problem is with technologists in the province of Alberta is technologist is not what we call a recognized right to title.
Yeah.
Engineers is one thing. I can graduate from beauty school and call myself a technologist. And unless you're in a certain group, which the government has, you can call yourself that. And I think it dilutes it. Becoming a member of ASCT, we're going to fight to make sure that you graduated from post-secondary education. You have done this. You have done the due diligence to be granted that CET title.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, eventually, the PTEC title, professional technologist.
Well, and that's something nationally that's been a struggle. Like, it's not an Alberta problem. This is something across Canada. Like you said, we have some of the finest, I would say, welding adjacent programs, to not call them welding programs, in the world. Yet we don't have welding engineering as a title, which is mind blowing, considering that we are probably the number one for mining, right up there for oil and gas, right? Right up there for manufacturing. But somehow we don't have this title. Like,
so the problem is, and I've been dealing with this for a while, and Engineer Canada does not send me a Christmas card. Welding is, I still consider, a true engineering discipline.
mm-hmm.
I deal with chemical, I deal with electrical, I deal with all the 5 main ones, except for environment. Even environmental we get into now.
There's a big ESG component to it, absolutely.
Yeah. So we look at everything. We don't kind of concentrate on one, but we're wide.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like, how can 63 of of countries around the world recognize welding as a true engineering discipline, but we can't?
Yeah, I actually don't know the background of that, and I don't understand why there would be an issue with that happening.
Well, I always when you stand there in a meeting, and I always do this, and they say, welding's welding. I said, okay, I want everybody to go and look around the building. I want to look at your chair and everything else.
Yeah.
How many of you guys are sitting on a weld? Would you want that weld to fail? How about the building, those beams? Are they wood? No, they're metal. Do you want to make sure that those welds are good? And I said, welding engineering is a very disciplined art that should be recognized in Canada.
Yeah.
We can why can CWB recognize international welding engineer, but Engineer Canada cannot?
That's right. It seems to be a crossroads there, where at CWB we've had to. I mean, we are our codes and we are our regulator for this country, but there's times when you take your hat off and look at the rest of the world and say, okay, we got to keep up as well. Like, I mean, we can make our own rules and that's dandy for our house, but if we're not playing nice in the neighborhood, we're also going to handcuff ourselves, right?
Yes. Well, you're 100% correct on that. And I'm a international welding technologist. I had to do the examination
Mm-hmm.
because I think I was number 5 in Canada. And they said, oh, you're in a 2-year program, but here it's 3-year. Okay, I'll take the exams. Then after I took my exams, and they said, oh, yeah, 2 years good enough now. I went, thanks. I took all that studying for nothing. But it's just like when I took it, and it's amazing where I have that designation that CWB gifted me. And they said, oh, you're IWT. And I work in Trinidad. They recognized it.
Mm-hmm.
BP recognizes it. Shell International recognizes it because it's part of ISO 3834 requirements. And if you're in the welding industry, please read that ISO, because I think that's going to be coming in the future, because that's kind of like a guarantee for people making sure that the welding process from the beginning to the end is going to flow correctly. And at the end, we're going to have a product that's going to meet or exceed the parent engineering requirements.
Right.
It's just, I don't know why. It's just welding in Canada. It's just, and I'm glad that the province of Alberta is doing something to get, like, you go look at I Drive Highway 2.
Mm-hmm.
Join the trades. I don't see anything saying about join technology, do this. They read the ads saying join the trades because they realized was the average age of a welder in Alberta now is like 61 years old.
Yeah, it's in the 50s. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about what's going to happen in 5 years' time down the road.
Yeah, that's I think about myself. I'm coming up on 50. I got maybe another, maybe 10 years left in me. And I feel like I'm not even close to being done what I wanted to do or to give back what I need to give back. And it's disheartening sometimes. But, until I see a kid, until I run into that 20-year-old girl who's starting her welding journey and inspires me all over again and gives me that hope that, you know what, maybe I'm just doom and gloom a little bit too much on my side. Maybe these kids are all right,
Yeah. I never forget when I worked with one company, there was this female engineer and she hadn't job shadowed for a while. She went back to school, became a welding engineer.
Mm-hmm.
She said, you know what? This is cool.
Yeah.
And she knew the terminology. We won't talk about terminology. This is a podcast.
Yeah.
But she had certain slang words. I'm like looking at her going, and even the welders were dropping their jaw and just look inside the pipe. And there was a certain thing, a defect.
Yeah.
And he went up and she sounds right. She went back to school as a welding engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of young ladies who live around here and they see me TIG welding. I have my door open, music cranked, and they asked me the question. I said, you guys are better TIG welders than I am. And they go, what do you mean? I says, I have seen the best TIG welder I ever seen in my life was this female TIG welder. It was beautiful. Like she had to take more patience than I did and everything else. And she said, yeah, there's a lot of females now going into the trades, and rightfully so. It has actually made a huge improvement, in my opinion.
I agree.
About that.
It elevates the industry.
I don't have to go to college. I said, you can get an apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
The government actually will give you money to go and attend this. So they're not going to give you money to attend university, but if you want to become a tradesperson, you actually come. And they went up and they came by and they are actually getting their apprenticeship. We need to promote the industry more.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. It's true. Well, Terry, we're getting close to the end of the interview here. Yep. It's getting close, but there's a couple of things I want to ask you, just in terms of Alberta specific. Sometimes Alberta is a little bit of a discussion across Canada. They sometimes Alberta can be very strong in its opinions. Let's say that. We talked about oil and gas, which is what everyone thinks about when we talk about Alberta. But I actually don't know if that's necessarily the future, right? Because when I look at the prairies, me being in Saskatchewan and what we have out here in the West, I look at the amount of space we have. I look at the amount of energy we have and the ability, the resources we have, the mining, the all the other industries that we kind of haven't put the investment into that we perhaps should have when we were all just gung-ho on the oil and gas. So for yourself, especially in the wire-fed process world that you love to promote, where's manufacturing in Alberta? Where's the state of manufacturing? That's been a discussion I've heard asked across Canada. Where's Alberta in manufacturing? Because I I feel like they're maybe a little bit behind and trying to catch up, but that's from the outside. I'd love to hear your opinion.
So my opinion, and this is, I'm shutting the doors. Our dogs are playing like crazy on right now. My opinion is the manufacturing in the province of Alberta needs to step up. I hear and I always state this. In Alberta, we call costs. What is it going to cost this new welding machine? Why can't we say invest?
Mm-hmm.
If I can make a welder pay this machine off in 6 months' time and actually increase my productivity, are we investing instead of costing? That is kind of the mindset we have in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Has it improved? Tremendously. They're looking at cobots, they're looking at wire feeders, like they're done with stick welding. Like the shops are actually like
they're transitioning, they're moving over.
I have one I looked and where's your stick machine? It's outside in the back. And that's where everything's wired now.
Yeah.
The problem was, and it was not, and this is a comment that specifically I will state, we were at fault as end users, as EPCs and everything else. We put restrictions on because what happened previously 25, 30 years ago, they still instill it. Like flux core was a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago, flux core was welded like, there's a sheet of material and they folded it. And sometimes they had a hopper and they had hollow spots and everything else. And all of a sudden you get porosity and some other issues. That was 30 years ago. Think about your computer you're on right now.
Yeah.
Imagine that computer when I paid back, I still have my receipt when I got my 386 with a wonderful 16-color monitor and the thing crashed all the time. But we still accept computers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, companies realize, you know what? That was back then. This is now. If you go look at one of the largest oil and gas companies, I heard through grapevine, their new welding spec is specifically for production and quality, which is more towards welding. Stick is an exception, not the rule.
Yeah, I've seen lots of I've been looking at some of the new procedures around the world for oil and gas, nuclear, and it's all MIG root, flux core fill and cap, like almost all of the ones I see now.
And I'm my favorite still metal core, so I did a project where it was metal core, root, fill, and cap, and one wire.
Nice.
And it was not flawless execution because the thing with metal core is because of the process itself, sometimes you get little silicates.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have the NDE technician who actually will scan it and say, oh, that's a lack of fusion. And I said, no, it's actually silicated fusion. Here, let's cut out the sample. We polished it. We took a white ultraviolet light. You get the pearlescent color. And they said, oh, I still think it's lack of fusion. No, please. It's code mentions it. And now everybody is starting to learn how to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a huge thing. Now, I remember a story that I did approximately about 15 years ago out in Ontario, where a company was doing these injection quills. They were having welding problems with the OLEDs and everything else. And I went out there and it was just like, looked at these guys and they said, oh, we got problems. We got distortion. We got this. So I went out there for 5 days, and I said, okay, I'm here to help you out. And I went there and grabbed my lid. I said, why are you guys welding this with a stick? Why don't you go grab a suitcase? Oh, I can't do it. And I said, oh, here, let's go talk. So I have a contact at this one company and they said, hey, I need this. I need your sales rep out here too. So we just got this machine, brought it in there. Just the machine. We ran modified waveform roots,
Mm-hmm.
did the root fill and cap with the flux core. And all of a sudden, the guy says, I paid off 6 welding machines in 7 months.
Yeah.
He goes up, Sarah, and he says, I'll buy you lunch next time I see you. I was standing there. I said, and that's where the thing was. Like the guys were saying, oh, you can't weld up with
wire.
Yeah. And then it's just this mindset. And we're still in Alberta. Saskatchewan's improving because I'm actually a member of Pegasus in Saskatchewan and deal with some of it. They are more, how would you say, they don't think inside the box. They're allowed to think outside the box a bit. And I've seen where, can we use wire on duplex stainless steel? Can we use this?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm like going, sure you can.
Absolutely.
And you'll
Yeah.
go, and they go, really? I said, yeah, I'm all for it. But I still see some end users still have restrictions of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see when the specification has been written, it's like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
Times
Your
have
computers changed. Your cars have changed. Like I always make it, as we are gearheads,
Mm-hmm.
is, imagine in 1985, a 350 Chevy put out 160 throbbing horsepower. I have a 2022 Honda Civic SI that puts out 220 horsepower, and I get 52 miles per gallon.
And half the cylinders.
And half the cylinders. So you know what? Technology's okay. We
Mhm.
just need to adapt it more within our industry.
Yeah. And I hope it comes in the West. We're a little bit stubborn out West in terms of how we advance, but I feel like we also like to make money, right? The West has been pretty good at always being able to make money, and maybe that's enough. Maybe just the incentive of, hey, you're not going to be able to make enough money unless you advance with the technology, because trust me, our competitors are. I was at a meeting in the States a couple months ago, and someone made the comment about, well, out in Asia, they just pay people 5 cents a day, and that's why they make it so cheap. And one of the companies that was there, who has a huge facility in Asia, said, that's not true. That's not true. What Asia did is that they invested into robotics and lean and 5S and systems. So it's not that they pay people 5 cents an hour, it's that they can make 1,000 of them in the time it takes us to make one. And that's the difference. It's not the pay, it's the speed, right? Now, if we're not going to be able to do the speed, which I don't know if we want to compete on that level, but we can compete on the quality level. We can compete on the innovation and design, the development level. There's so many things where we could be leaders.
You brought up a very good point, as they're willing to invest.
Yeah.
We call it cost. They're willing to invest. One of the things I want to kind of mention right now, I'm a member of AWS on B2 committee dealing with welding procedures. I'm the chairman for ARC Energy. And hearing industry in the United States adopting waveform control welding and all the modern stuff kind of needs to step up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is something. It's like they're saying, it's like a TIG is still, this is my opinion, one of the most difficult welds to make.
And
it's
slow.
A skill set.
And it's slow.
Very slow. I can run a wire process and make just as good welds as a TIG, and I can do it for nearly, 25% of the time.
Yeah. And a fraction of the cost, a fraction of the gases, like everything.
Yeah.
You know?
So that is something that we have to look at, because when we stand there and they adopt it, and we're adopting, when we're doing ARC Energy, we're actually doing calibration of waveform control welding machines. And we are adopting, we're doing actually a recommended practice. AWS recognizes it, that we have to do this. I think something that we have to look at from CSA and other things that we have to start looking, like, don't worry about stick. Stick's already well established, 50 years in code, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We need to start looking how to adopt modern technology. One of the things I would love to see in CSA code, since we're talking about welding, is actually having the welding software program part of your WPS.
Oh, wow.
Changes have been made.
Yeah, that's wild.
Changes
That's
have
great.
been made numerous times with other manufacturers. Have that as an essential variable. They are fine-tuning our machines all the time. We can get software programs. We can go online, grab it. It should be written on the WPS.
Yeah, I remember working on an Inconel job, and we had a brand new Lincoln STT. I reached out to my rep, and I was like, I got a weird Inconel here. I just got my lab report back. It's got some weird, alloys that are a little bit on the edges of the scope of what I'm used to. He emailed me the procedure. He emailed me. I put it on a USB. I plugged it into my machine. Done.
I was on a project up in Fort McMurray, and on the inside, they did stick. Don't ask me why. I just said, okay, fine. Had downhand BD rod down. And on the outside, we ran modified short circuit routes. And all of a sudden, I went up and I never forget it, where we were starting having a little difficulties dealing with this type of wire in this application. And I phoned him up, said, hey, I don't know what's going on in here. I checked the gas, everything else. And the guy goes, yeah, sleep on it tonight. We'll send you another program. And that's what you said. They sent me a program, put it on USB stick, went through all the machines, took me not even 5 minutes each machine, all of a sudden got fixed.
Done. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, that's wild. And it's good for the future. I think it's good for bringing the interest in, like letting the kids know too, like you're going to play with some really cool toys. Like you're going to, like the future is really neat. Like it's going to be endless. Every welder in the next 20 years is going to know how to run a cobot, CNC, cutting machines, processes. These things are all wild.
When I was working with one organization, the BP came out, and we went to this one facility in Calgary who graciously lends us their lab, and we had the twin wire Lincoln machine,
the hyperfill, yeah,
hyperfill. And all of a sudden, he goes up, and he looked at me. I said, "I don't care. In this place here, you're going to try it." And
it's cool.
He tried it, and I said, "Here's a joint. I want you to fill it." And he goes, "We filled it." He goes, "Why are we not changing our spec to encapsulate this technology?" And I'm going, that's the question that we need to ask.
That's right.
But when he saw hyperfill, and one of the things that I had when I was down in Lincoln as well is when I was with MCAW, twin wire MCAW, I had a wonderful tan because I was stupid because my shirt was not up to my neck. After I did about 15 minutes of welding, great tan in that one.
Well, that's a lot of joules there, boy.
I was standing there and I said, okay, I had my thing, and all of a sudden I didn't see my button get a button that was welding away, because I'm one of those guys when I'm welding you could take a gun beside me and shoot it off. I was still on flinch. And I welded it, and it was like, wow, we need to help industry fabricators, anybody who wants to adapt this technology. We should be there for support, not hindrance. And that was a huge thing. And I've seen shops where you come up and Max, you know me, I like going on shop floor and all of a sudden got guys, here's a spool. I got demo spool. Let's try it on. And they're going, this is cool.
Yeah.
They just say it's a little hot, but it
is hot. Yeah.
Energy. But and one of the shops I dealt with, and it's a great shop I did, is actually they had cooling vests, which now you could buy.
Yeah. Air cooled. Yeah.
And they had a cooling vest, and all of a sudden that helped the welders be more consistent. Like,
well, there's cooling helmets now. There's cool helmets that blow cold air and fresh air, and it's a different world. It's a different world.
It is,
and I'm glad it is, because although I fondly remember many of the crazy, dirty, nasty things I did in my job, they weren't good for me.
It's pretty bad. When we used to weld, you used to blow your nose and there's
just
black.
It would be black for days.
My one time I was down there, was doing a bunch of TIG welding, and Bring goes, "Why do you go on I have an inclined bench. Why do you go on the opposite way to get the argon out of my lungs?" Because after a while, when you TIG weld, you feel it build up.
Yeah, you do.
Now these days, you know what? We're making sure that the welders are doing it safely.
Yeah. That,
they can extend their career path. There's a lot clean to the manufacturers, OH&S, codes and regulations and everything else. It's not the dirty industry job it used to be.
No.
It is now technician level, best way to put it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Terry.
No
Is there anything you'd like to say? Last words or a shout out to anybody?
Get involved.
Yeah.
When you're silent, you'll never be heard. That's why I'm on different committees. People say, why are you on so many committees and stuff like that? Is you need your voice to be heard. And for example, I'm on AWS, I'm on ASME Section 9, I'm on SAE, some other codes. Don't be specific to welding. SAE is now adopting different welding practices as well within their industry because what my involvement. So get involved. CWB, volunteer, ask them. CSA committees, get involved. There's nothing wrong with it. 10 committee meetings. You'll be amazed.
Yeah. And the people you meet through the committee meetings are amazing, because I'm on a number of committees. I always have been since I was young. And all I do is learn. I just learn, and you meet amazing people.
Yeah. No, it's been a fantastic career. It's been a really hot subject in my life. Had sparked my interest. Just kidding, a lot of puns. But
I'm shocked.
but yeah, it's a great industry. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much on behalf of everyone that's going to listen, Terry. And please reach out to the AWOC committees, the committees in Alberta. Get involved, like you said.
Yeah.
It's always very not only fruitful for your own career, but for the industry to have people be more involved.
For sure. Well, thank you very much for your opportunity to have this discussion with you. I think it was fantastic. And, like I said, my main job for my career path is I want to get work back in Alberta. And we can do that by increasing the efficiency of it.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Terry. And for all the listeners that are following along with the podcast, thank you so much for making it such a success. We are trudging forward. We're into our 5th season, over 200 episodes, over 50,000 downloads. And we're growing like crazy, and it's all because of our listeners and, of course, our wonderful guests and their stories. We very much appreciate it, and I'm not going to leave AWOC alone. I think I'm going to pull a couple more people out of there for interviews because it's a really fun group.
I think Matthew I'll send Matthew that we elected him to do the next podcast. How's that?
Yeah, we can volunteer them.
If we do a presentation next week, we can reciprocate the favor.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Terry. And everyone, take care. I'll see you at the next episode, so don't go anywhere. Thanks so much.
We hope you enjoyed the show.